Hello, and welcome to the On Global Leadership Workshop on doing business in today's China. We're very happy to have you as part of this workshop, and we want to give you a deep sense of what's happening in China today. We have an approach to what we're doing that is very much grounded in what the On Global Leadership approach to studying China is. At On Global Leadership, our mission is to be a premier institution on thought leadership, research, teaching, and advisory work in key areas that shape the global political economy today. Our vision for achieving this mission is to leverage key platforms. We do advisory work, we work with education technology, we do executive education, both synchronous and asynchronous. We do coaching, and we do as much thought leadership as we can in these important areas to help companies optimize their futures. Now, in talking about China, China's a complex place. It's got a deep, long history. It's a complex geopolitical system, but it's also complex internally. Sometimes when we think about China, we think about it being the manufacturer for the world, and China does possess, as we believe, the most sophisticated and innovative manufacturing supply chain in the world. And China is also a very important geopolitical entity. And this course, therefore, or this workshop, therefore, is not just about the economics of the system and navigating the complex markets that have arisen over the last 40 plus years, but also thinking about China as a major force in the geopolitical landscape. Now, let me say together what our philosophy for this course is and what the learning outcomes we hope are. The philosophy and learning outcomes very much map onto what I just said about the complexity of China. We want to spend a little bit of time on the culture and history of China. This is not a history course and not a culture course, but we do believe that if you're going to be effective at doing business in China, if you're going to be effective in sitting across from the negotiating table, across from people who are important players in this economy, you need to understand a little bit about culture. And understanding about culture means understanding something about China's history and its role in the world over the last several millennia. We also believe that the political economy of China is an incredibly important thing to gather a deeper understanding for. Again, this is a business course, but understanding business means not just understanding the markets and the market opportunities, but it also means understanding the complex process that China has undergone, particularly over the last 40 years since 1979. The third thing that we really emphasize in our work is what we call real-world, boots-on-the-ground experiences and examples. Everyone on this team, and the team will introduce itself by the end of this introductory lecture, we have spent our lives studying China. Two of us, Dashell and Chris, are native Chinese. They're native Shanghainese, and they have lived their lives growing up in this system. Two of us, Diane and myself, came to China later in life after growing up in the U.S. system and U.S. culture. But China has since then become our lives. And Diane moved to China first in the 1980s. I moved there for the first time in the 1990s. Diane has spent her life since then living there and experiencing both the corporate landscape and administrative work in places like the Shanghai's American Chamber of Commerce. For myself, I've spent my life studying, researching, teaching, and coaching about China. And through this real world experience, we're not just reading data and statistics from world atlases. We're actually going to give you examples of what we've seen and what we experience and what it means for being a successful business person in China. The agenda for this workshop is broken into 10 different sections. Now, there are multiple videos for some of these sections, so I can't promise that it won't be more than that. But in each section, we want to give you a sense of some key aspects. In this session one, we're giving a brief introduction here, and then we're going to spend a little time on what we call, in quotes, a brief history. And we put that in quotes because this is actually China's history is a very long and storied history. But we want to give you some key historical moments that we think are important. We then turn to China's political economy and talk in particular about the process of reform that has occurred over the last 40 plus years since Deng Xiaoping took power in 1979. And give you some of the logic there and what it all means for the emergence of China as a geopolitical power and as an economic power. We also want to spend time talking about manufacturing in China and the importance of partnerships today. We want to talk about innovation, the consumer ecosystem, and technology, which fits into both of those sessions. And then we want to spend time talking about China going global. If we were to talk about doing business in China today and not talk about the major Chinese organizations that are fanning out across the world, both through the Belt and Road Initiative, but also just as major players in the world's economy, we would be remiss. And then we want to spend a little time talking about things like the trade war and COVID-19 and what those have meant for doing business in China today. And of course, we can't have this conversation without talking about some major geopolitical issues. And of course, Taiwan is often on people's minds when we talk with different constituents about this. And then we'll give a summary of what it is that we hope you gathered from this workshop. Let me give you a brief introduction of myself and then turn it over to our on-the-ground China team to give you a sense of where we come from. For myself, I grew up in the United States. And then when I went to the University of Chicago, I was just planning on studying economics and going working as a consultant somewhere. But I took Chinese language, Mandarin, in my second year at Chicago, and I fell in love. I fell in love with the language. I fell in love with the history and culture. I spent some time living in Taiwan during that time and then came back and continued to study. I was a language and literature major, but then went on to my graduate work to study economic development in China, and then became a professor of business at a number of different business schools. I was dean of a business school for a little while, and I was also a corporate executive at Apple, living in China. And then finally returned to the United States in 2019, just before COVID hit. And since then have been a professor and executive director of China initiatives at the Thunderbird School of Global Management. The rest of our team also have very interesting stories, and I'll turn it over to them now to introduce themselves. China team? Okay, thank you. And that's the end of our introductory remarks for our workshop on doing business in today's China. We will be back in the next video lecture with a discussion of a brief history of China as a way to get some insights into the culture. Thank you.